Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, the place where we dive into insightful topics and explore the world of international relations. I'm your host, and today we've got a contentious issue on our hands. We're delving into the realm of international law and diplomacy as we discuss the question, would the International Court of Justice, ICJ, be considered corrupt if South Africa were to lose its case concerning Israel? Before we jump into the details, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on our in-depth analysis of global affairs. Now let's get started. The ICJ, as many of you know, is the principal judicial organ of the United Nations, tasked with settling legal disputes between states and providing advisory opinions on legal questions. It's meant to be a beacon of impartiality and justice. But what happens when a controversial case arises, such as South Africa's dispute with Israel? In this video, we'll explore the background of the case, the arguments presented by both parties, and the potential implications of a ruling against South Africa. We'll also examine the factors that could contribute to the perception of corruption within the ICJ and whether such concerns are valid. Now, smash that like button, share this video, and let's get started.
If South Africa loses their case against Israel at the ICJ, just know that the ICJ, the UN, and the whole Western world is corrupt. Because imagine this. Imagine the South Africans that survived in South Africa became lawyers and now are defending Palestinians against their experiencing. It's literally like the most poetic thing. Those who survived are now trying to help the people that are suffering under and then imagine they lose this case. This case is literally the benchmark for Western human rights. For Western humanity. Although I don't believe that Western governments have humanity or believe in universal human rights, however, this case is literally the benchmark as the whole world watches. So just know that if South Africa does lose, this illusion of Western human rights, democracy, and humanity that they love to put in our faces all the time is false. And just know that the Western world is corrupt and controlled.
Let's rewind a bit and understand the context. South Africa has brought a case against Israel to the ICJ, alleging violations of international law. As the legal proceedings unfold, questions emerge about the fairness of the process and the potential impact on the ICJ's reputation if the ruling doesn't align with public expectations. Now let's get into some reactions and stick around for the breakdown after the videos.
Fact is, the ICJ, the UN, and most of the West is corrupt, but not in favor of Israel. In favor of the Palestinians, in favor of Hamas. That's the reality. So if South Africa loses, and they're losing with everybody on their side, all it proves is they never had a case to begin with, even with all the corruption on their side. Let's see. Let's look at 1948 for a second. We know all of the Palestinians love to talk. The Nagba, 1948. What really happened? You lost a war with everybody on your side. 5 versus 1. Heck, the British were on your side. The British army officers were the ones leading the Arab Legion. That was the Jordanian military at the time, and they all had the same goal. The Secretary General of the Arab League said it was going to be a war worse than what the Mongols did. Your goal was for every single Jew. Your goal was not simply to establish a Palestinian state and stop the creation of a Jewish state. No! Your goal was, so you want the Jewish people, the Israeli people, to apologize for surviving. We're not going to do that. But you know what? You should thank us for winning that war. You know why? Simply put, if Israel did not win in 1948, there would not be a Palestinian people fighting for a right to exist today. The reality is, after 1948, Jordan had the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Let's see, Egypt had Gaza. Syria, they still had the Golan Heights. But there was no Palestinian state. If Israel lost, those surrounding Arab countries, they just would have swallowed up more of Israel, more land grabs. There was never a plan to establish a Palestinian state. If we go back to the 1936 Peel Commission, the Arab leaders at the time testified, what is a Palestinian? We are not Palestinian. What is a Palestinian state? We are Syrian. Make us Syrian. We don't want Palestine. That was a sentiment at the time. Until the 1960s, there really was no Palestinian national movement. So without Israel winning in 1948, there would not be a Palestinian people fighting. You would just simply be another Arab. So rather than hate us, start thanking us. You're welcome.
Israel will lose the trial at the International Court of Justice. I know it, you know it, Israel knows it, the whole world knows it. South Africa just simply presented a better case with well-articulated points and undeniable evidence of Israeli genocide. Israel's defense, on the other hand, was just all over the place. Their entire argument was the same talking points which Israel has been saying over the past few months. And Israel also knows how weak their defense is, because they never thought that they would reach this point where they're being sued over their war crimes and genocide in Gaza. However, Israel has made it abundantly clear time and time again that they will not stop no matter what the decision or the outcome is at the International Court of Justice. Just take a look at this recent tweet by Benjamin Netanyahu. That's why it's important that we must not entirely rely on the outcome of the International Court of Justice, why we should continue speaking up about Palestine, going to protests, and boycotting, because Israel will not stop, so why should we?
Do you believe South Africa should win or lose its initial case against Israel in the International Court of Justice based on its complaint that Israel has engaged in, is engaging in, and risks further engaging in acts against the Palestinian people in Gaza? And an interim court order should be made to stop Israel's military action until a final determination is made. Feel free to comment and follow for more.
Israel is now accusing South Africa of being legal arm of Hamas. You can't make this up. They really said that everything that South Africa brought to trial today was all lies. The quotes, the videos, the proof, the evidence, yeah, all lies. And they're claiming that South Africa is helping Hamas commit against Israel. I can't. It's actually comical at this point, because anyone who doesn't agree with is called in some way of working with Hamas, whether it's a random girl from New York or an entire country. If you do not agree with what Israel is doing to the Palestinian people, which if you are a decent human being, you should not agree with what they're doing, then you are somehow a part of Hamas. It's comical.
If there's one thing that we can agree on, it is that the Israeli Zionist regime is scared, and in their hearts they know that no one believes them, and they know that they're running out of time. Because why would the Minister of Foreign Affairs accuse the South Africa legal team of being affiliated with Hamas? And this sentiment is then echoed by the Israeli society, saying that South Africa is actually the legal arm of Hamas and Putin. And then the deranged mindset goes even further to say that the International Court of Justice is anti-side being committed against the Palestinians. When you're the same person that said there's no innocence, what do we really expect from a group of people that tweet stuff like this and this? People know that we can click translate and see their tweets. Do they not live in the same world as us? Just this morning, we heard this exact statement. There is an extraordinary feature in this case that Israeli political leaders, military commanders have systematically and in explicit terms declared there is no self-defense case that permits one to commit it. Whatever the final outcome is, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that they were humiliated in front of the world stage, and we all know that they're committing a genocide. As the court hearing was being broadcasted, they continued their acts on the Palestinian people. Just this morning, a family of 60 members in one house was surrounded in Khan Yunis, and then the Israeli military.
As we get into the breakdown, we'll dissect the key arguments from both sides, considering the complexities of international law and the delicate balance the ICJ must maintain. Is there room for bias in such high-stake cases, or does the court truly operate independently, free from external pressures? Furthermore, we'll discuss the potential consequences of the ICJ's credibility if South Africa were to lose the case. Would it be fair to label the court as corrupt? Or are there other factors at play that we need to consider? I want to hear your thoughts on this matter. Do you believe the ICJ could be susceptible to corruption in cases like these? Or do you trust its ability to uphold justice impartially? Share your opinions in the comments below, and let's spark a thoughtful discussion. Now that we've unpacked the key details of the South Africa versus Israel case at the ICJ, let's delve into the potential implications of the court's decision. This case, rooted in accusations of genocide, has far-reaching consequences for the parties involved at the broader international community. South Africa's claim is based on the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Crime of Genocide, with allegations that Israel's actions are a threat to the Palestinian group. On the flip side, Israel vehemently denies these claims, attributing its military actions to self-defense against Hamas, which is labeled as a threat as well. The ICJ heard oral arguments from both sides earlier this year and is gearing up to deliver its advisory opinion. Keep in mind that this opinion, though not legally binding, holds substantial moral and political weight internationally. Now, the pivotal question: what happens if South Africa wins or loses? If South Africa loses, it could signify that the ICJ did not find enough evidence of genocide or didn't accept jurisdiction, potentially impacting the Palestinian cause. This setback might embolden Israel to persist in its military campaign despite global outcry and a dire humanitarian situation. On the other hand, a win for South Africa would suggest that the ICJ found Israel guilty of genocide or accepted jurisdiction. This victory could bolster the Palestinian cause, giving them stronger diplomatic leverage. It might also discourage Israel from escalating the conflict, fearing potential sanctions and isolation. The outcome holds immense significance for those supporting Palestine, shaping their perception of justice and peace. A win may be a cause of celebration and a renewed hope for accountability, while a loss could trigger protests and calls for international intervention. As we eagerly await the ICJ's decision in the coming weeks, the world watches closely, recognizing the gravity of this case in shaping the narrative of a long-standing and complex conflict. Now, let's get into a pivotal moment in history that echoes through the decades: the Nagba, or the catastrophe, the term encapsulating the mass expulsion and displacement of around 750,000 Palestinians from their homes and lands after the 1948 Palestinian War. The conflict unfolded as Zion forces declared the State of Israel in May 1948, triggering a war with Arab states and Palestinian militias who opposed the UN partition plan, a plan that envisioned separate Jewish and Arab states in mandatory Palestine. Palestine, lacking a formal army or government, relied on support from the neighboring Arab countries, including Egypt, Transjordan, Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon. Interestingly, Britain, the ruling power in Palestine since 1920, declared neutrality upon its withdrawal in May 1948. However, some historical perspectives suggest indirect support to the Zion forces through training, arming, and restricting Arab forces' entry. The war concluded with armistice agreements in 1949, establishing Israel's borders beyond the UN plan. It left the Gaza Strip under Egypt and the West Bank under Jordanian control. Hundreds of Palestinian villages were destroyed, leading to the creation of significant refugee population in camps across neighboring countries and occupied territories. Beyond territorial shifts, the war marked the genesis of the Israel-Palestinian conflict and the broader Arab-Israeli conflict persisting through the years. The scars of the Nagba still resonate, impacting the lives of those displaced and shaping the complex dynamics of the region. As we reflect on this chapter of history, it is essential to recognize its enduring influence on the present-day Middle East. Breaking down the latest developments, Benjamin Netanyahu's response to the ICJ case adds a layer of complexity in an already tense situation. While not explicitly committing to a change in Israel's military campaign, he vehemently criticized the case as despicable, hypocritical, and malicious. Netanyahu's choice of appointing Aaron Barak, a controversial figure to represent Israel at the ICJ, underscores the high stakes. He argues that Barak is the best defender of Israel's right to defense and aims to expose what he calls the lies of the accusers. But what could be the fallout from this stance? Netanyahu's strong rhetoric might further isolate Israel globally, especially if the ICJ rules against it. Potential consequences range from sanctions and boycotts to increased diplomatic pressure, urging an end to the occupation and aggression in Gaza and the West Bank. Domestically, Netanyahu's decision faces criticism from within his party and allies, accusing him of betraying the nationalist agenda. This, coupled with corruption charges and a fragile coalition government, could erode his support and legitimacy, potentially triggering a demand for political change and a peaceful resolution of the conflict. The Israel ICJ case has become a global focal point, sparking diverse opinions worldwide. Some support South Africa's initiative, asserting that Israel should be held accountable for alleged crimes against Palestinians, citing legal and moral grounds. Conversely, there are those opposing South Africa's move, defending Israel's right to self-defense against Hamas. They argue the case is politically motivated, biased, and questions the ICJ's jurisdiction. A sizable group remains neutral, acknowledging valid arguments on both sides. They express concerns for the humanitarian and security situation, hoping for a peaceful resolution without escalating violence. Unraveling the complexities, Israel, while not explicitly accusing South Africa of aiding genocide, raised concerns of hypocrisy and alleged support for Hamas. Israel's foreign minister stated that South Africa overlooked the actions of the Hamas group who targeted Israelis, emphasizing the intricate nature of the conflict. Israel contends that South Africa's ICJ case is politically motivated and biased, asserting that it sidesteps the context and complexities of the situation. Denying allegations of genocide, Israel firmly defends its right to self-defense against Hamas. Today we delved into the intricate dynamics surrounding the Israel ICJ case. From dissecting different perspectives to unraveling the historical nuances of the Nagba, we've navigated through complex topics. Remember, fostering understanding and empathy is crucial in navigating our global landscape. Subscribe for more insightful discussions on diverse subjects. I have been your host. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, stay curious and compassionate. Signing off.